I guess we'll get started then. What I didn't do last time was actually introduce everyone properly. I'm going to do it at the end. Without further ado, we'll do the introductions properly this time. So this will be the Orion Talking Group 002, correct? Second episode with Joseph Pistone, our very own handsome Italian boy.
Thank you. Buongiorno.
Yeah, buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
Dominique Di Coco.
Like I said, third best.
Third best.
Yeah.
So you will be the subject of our podcast and your thoughts on a couple topics. Before we get into that, I'm going to actually do my job and introduce everyone else. Mitchell, our producer, say hello.
Hi. Hi, Mitchell.
Yes. And Blake, our handsomest person, second only to Joe. Of course, you were on our first episode, which I'm sure by now everyone's listened to. And, you're here to relate to him, comfort him as I critique him.
This is not what I was told was happening in this interview.
This is not following the brief.
This is not.
This is actually an intervention.
Shabardi intervention.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what that is.
We're gonna bleep that. We're gonna bleep that out. I'll get you the book that I read on it. So, I own the company, but it's really.
What's happening? Act like you've been here before.
That was so much better than the first one. What the fuck? So much better than the first one. We're gonna talk just about Joe. You're trying to spit out coffee.
This is so bad.
That was beautiful.
We are not good at this.
I think it's gonna be actually very genuine. Anyway, he's trying.
I'm trying so hard.
So yeah, I'll be asking you a bunch of questions.
Don't go. Don't go to it.
Oh, it's so good. It's Blake is just sending me over
It's a deep chest light. It's right here. Mm-hmm.
All right, give me some time. I'll recover. And I'm sure all that'll get trimmed out after we all bust out laughing. Whew. Or he'll just leave it in because he's an asshole.
We should do that.
Yeah, anyway, so I'll be asking you a bunch of questions. Obviously, it's going to be conversational, but the main topic, before we get into like...
It's going splendiferously.
You gonna try again tomorrow, or?
We're just in the episode right now.
And it's Orion Talking Group. Ba-dum-dum.
Oh.
If you try to spit on the line one more time.
I was trying to chameleon it and get it out of here.
I can't. It's still going. I'll get there, guys. I'll get there. You get that like tension in your cheeks that can't stop.
Yeah.
Now we all look stoned because our eyes are
And now we're all like fucking weeping.
Alright, I'm good.
Are you good? You made it now?
I've been good. Yeah, I've been extremely professional.
Yeah, you didn't laugh whatsoever. So before we get into your background, what we wanted to originally talk about is fucking laughing, dude.
It was how you were last night, by the way.
No, it's not
Every
at
little
all.
thing.
Yeah, we've gotten to that point. Before we get into your background and your actual, life story, we don't want it to be one of those podcasts where you talk about yourself all the time.
Yeah, I don't want that.
One that would be boring.
Nobody gives a fuck.
Right? But I would rather you inform the audience on your background, who you are, and stuff like that.
I
And we
don't
talk.
want to now.
Let me talk about like actual shit, right?
Yeah.
So before we do all that, where we are right now, Ben Franklin Range. We talked about it a little bit on the first episode. We are recording here for this one as well.
R.I.P. Ben Franklin.
That's right. R.I.P. Died a long time ago. But this place is named after him because it's fucking badass. They got the lodge where we are. I think it sleeps like 16 people. Multiple bathrooms, showers, and all that stuff. Refrigerators. We cooked some weird frozen pasta on their stove that you brought.
It works.
Gave me indigestion. They've got 3 flat ranges, a 900-yard unknown distant range, 8,000 square foot 2-story shoot house, You do a bunch of like open air movement classes here because it's like 1,000 or 1,100 acres or something.
Lots.
I was just gonna ask that. How big this whole property is? Because you can see forever.
I think it's like 65 miles of off-road track.
Yeah, it's the longest off-road track in the U.S. Pretty cool. So we're super happy to be here at Ben Franklin Range. Just for anyone that's listening, they were kind enough while we're here at the Human Trafficking Awareness Range Day that they're hosting to let us use their classroom. And Mitchell set up this badass studio in here. Just
It smells like your grandmother's basement.
yeah, he was like, yeah, I'll buy some knickknacks. And then me and Blake walked in here to do the first episode. And it was like, we got all this stuff like sound blankets and space material reflecting light on me and shit. It was really cool. So you're lucky to be here because now we can interview you in this space.
Am I not invited normally? And, like, someone canceled and I forgot to fill in.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
sick
lucky to
of,
be
like-
at BFR, man, with this cool studio. So you know, say thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's happening?
It's about time.
Yeah.
Thank you for my effort.
That's right. So tell us a little bit about your background. Obviously, you're a Marine, you're a cop. Kind of walk us through a little bit of that, who you are, what you do, things of that nature.
Joe Pistone. I'm not the owner of Orion Training Group.
Clearly.
We've established that early on. Who is the owner of Orion Training Group?
One of the great hidden secrets of the internet.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm almost never on the page.
Well, that is actually a good inside joke too, because everyone else in the cadre gets DMs all the time, like, "Hey, do you own the company?" And it's like, no, dude. Like, it's very clearly Jared. Like, why would you think any of us had any stake in this company? We don't even get to work here, really. He barely pays us.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a pro bono thing just to be
Right.
around me. Yeah.
We're your Make-A-Wish kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Your time is limited, so welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks. All right.
So yeah, tell us about yourself.
Man, where to start? I guess backtrack to, I guess, when my first big boy job started, right? So 18, right out of high school, went to join the military, joined the Marines. It's kind of one of those things too, where like, a lot of people say like you either know like that's what you want to do, or like people do it as a last resort. I think I was kind of one, like that's what I wanted to do the entire time. I wanted to do military stuff. I don't think I was really set on a branch for a while until like probably my junior or senior year. I still think I wanted to go to college, and then I realized how much I hated school and didn't want to spend another 4 years doing it. So instead, I decided to enlist. I wanted to go to school years later and stuff. I've been working on my bachelor's degree for like 10 years, just because that's how much I hate the process of being a good student, because it is a lot of hard work. But,
Certainly.
yeah. But I spent about 9 years on active duty. Was a staff sergeant when I left active service. Did a few deployments to a few different places. Meritorious promoted a few times, and I look back at like that whole 9 year time period, and like everyone says, it goes by so fast, man. Like it really does. And one of the biggest things that I remember taking away from it is just like each individual squad that like I was able to like raise and like grow up with and stuff, and like train, move on with, get a new one, start with new guys, go to a new unit. That stuff to me is like the best cycle, you know.
Certainly.
Training new guys up, being a part of that new team, even as like the lowest common denominator, being on a new team, being trained by someone else. So that's probably some of my most favorable moments was doing that. Looking back on those, made it like a point to like try and take like a squad picture with like every squad that you know we were a part of. So I have those all saved and stuff.
A lot of people don't do that too, and that's like weird sidetrack. But like the photos that you have after the fact mean so much.
Yeah.
But in the moment, you're like, "Don't take a photo." And then you're like, "Do I look good in the photo?"
Yeah. Well, they always spark up good stories and stuff too, man. Like one of my buddies who's here at HTA, he and I were in 3-2 together, and we were just talking about it. And I had no idea that I had known him for that long. But it's been like 13 years almost.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how is that even possible? Because I look back, I was like, oh, I was only in for 9. So like, how's the math doesn't math? And I'm like, wait, but I've been out for like 5 years now.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
So you said 3-2, and you know, think of me as a layperson because I know basically nothing about the Marine Corps structure, and the numbers mean nothing to me. So a little bit about what you did with the CQB program and stuff, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so that's that's like towards the end of my career. So I started off in Security Forces Regiment. When I signed my first initial enlistment, it was a Security Force option on an infantry contract. So it's pretty common. A lot of people wind up doing it just based on job availability and stuff. But I enlisted in 2009. That was my first contract. So I went to Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team for 2.5-ish years. And basically there, we're like a mobile RTT, like QRF, quick reaction force type expeditionary,
Right.
reaction team, and our primary job was embassy reinforcement, or like neo operations. So like, mm, what's the right word for all that? Evacuation of non-essential personnel, something like that.
Non-combatant evacuation operation.
That's the one.
I'm
Yeah.
so glad you're here because I have no idea.
Yeah, so we were one of our deployments. We were in mainland Japan, and they had that really bad earthquake that shut down the nuclear reactors, and they were worried about the whole nuclear stuff going on and all that because of how bad the earthquake and the tsunami threat was. So we had to evacuate like all of mainland Japan in the general area that we were just south of Tokyo, or Tokyo Bay and Yokosuka, if my geography is right. But that was like one of our jobs. So we were already forward deployed in Japan at the time, so that was one of our missions. At the time, too, the Marines, I don't know if they still do it. My first deployment was to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And that was when we were still like a few good men, like on the fence line in the same, mop towers, staring across the minefields at some Cuban soldier, like flicking each other off and
Right.
making funny faces at each other and playing games. And that was a cool experience, too.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's neat.
I don't know if they do that anymore.
They still do.
The Marines do, though, or they change it over or turn it over to the Navy or something?
As far as I know, they still do.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. There was something I had heard that Navy security forces or something was taking it over or something to that effect. But
Yeah, that would be reason. I know a young security forces guy who left it. Probably like right after you got out. I think he came into it, and I think he did a tour down there. He definitely did a tour down there.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think that was my first one, like right in 2010 or something. Within a year of being in, that was my first deployment. Excuse me. So did a few more with that unit. Then I was able to go to 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, which is an infantry unit on Camp Lejeune. They're, fresh out of squad leader school and stuff. Came to the fleet, started raising squads, and then did 2 deployments with them. I was there for about 5 or so years. And then around that time frame, I was already a staff sergeant, so I'm looking for like, your secondary duty that's outside of the scope of your normal responsibility. So you either get, told you're going to go be a drill instructor, or you get told you're going to go be a recruiter, or you get told you're going to go be a Marine security guard in some Ethiopian or embassy or something,
Right.
wherever, right? And I didn't want to do any of those. So I was fortunate enough to have made some connections when I went through some of my leadership academies and stuff in Quantico. And one of my buddies at the time was the chief instructor of the Close Quarters Combat School in Chesapeake, Virginia, which was like the premier CQB school for Marine Security Forces guys. So I put in the letter with him. He recommended me, made a good recommendation, and I wound up being able to get orders to that unit. And basically, as soon as I was able to check in, I was vetted and stuff, and then was able to try out for the cadre. And then became a student as part of the cadre, and of course you got to graduate the school and all that stuff and earn the MOS.
Right.
And then from there, just kind of worked my way up internally in the instructor chain to the point where I was developing curriculum and stuff for the program. So
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Really unique experience. And
Yeah.
one of our other guys, Jason, similar background, went to the school but didn't do the curriculum development side. Wasn't on staff there.
Yeah.
And he was in 93 or 97 or something. I was in like diapers at the time. But it's cool to have 2 of y'all from such a gap in time with similar backgrounds.
Yeah.
So it's been really neat.
it's a very niche little
Yeah.
spot that
Yeah.
is kind of just like,
Cool logo too.
yeah, that no one ever really knows about it unless they've been there, unless they've heard something, because it's not very well spoken for unless you're in that regiment or in that unit or around it or something, or if you've been around the Marine Corps for a while, then you get
Yeah.
guys. But,
Yeah, if you're in the infantry, like you know about them because the guys come from security force. They do their
Right.
first couple of years, and like I'd heard of the CQB school, but like I never knew anything about it, and I never like oh yeah, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
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 I think that was a weird part too. So before I even went to that school, we had done like a watered down course and stuff when I was originally in security forces. I went to the fleet in 3-2, right? So when I was in 3-2 for those 5 years, I was the NCO and staff NCO getting the security force guys who were, had only been, the old me, the guy who had
Right.
only been in 2.5, 3 years, whatever it was. And now they're coming to the fleet. Some of them are, corporals, lance corporals and stuff, looking to fill a new role now. For the majority of the time while you're in that first unit, you really don't do your primary MOS very much. you're an infantryman first, but your other job specialty is so specific that you're not out there really scouting and patrolling a whole lot. You're not building patrol bases a whole lot. You're not doing a lot of that little stuff, but you are doing some very specialized things, um, which I think with the right leadership and guidance made them really, really good Marines. You know, if you think about the structure of like an infantry battalion or something, um, you have all these specialty units that are separate. You have machine guns that are a whole section. You have mortars that are a whole section. Snipers that have a whole platoon in a specialized company. Well, when we would deploy as just a 30-man, 30 to 45-man unit, all our attachments are internal. So everybody's cross-trained on all sorts of stuff. So when we go and we deploy somewhere, like we are the machine gunners. Like we didn't really have mortars at the time, but we are the designated marksmen, so we are the communicators, and sometimes we'll have a radio attachment and stuff, but you learn to be very independent, right?
Right.
That was cool to have that experience and then bring some of that, leadership and stuff to the fleet, and then see these guys coming to me now with some of the same issues, some of the same concerns, and then training them. It's like, hey, not to forget everything you learned here, but you have a whole new mission set now where we got to get you spun up on very specific things that you're going to go and deploy now, and you haven't done finding hole in a while, so start digging.
Right. Yeah, get back to being a Marine.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So, well, like we said before, bringing that into the law enforcement side, because we're kind of doing the compare and contrast, the transitions we want to focus on between those two. But first, we got to hear about the law enforcement side.
Yeah.
So, walk us through what you do in LE or your experience in LE so far.
Yep. So when I left active duty in 2018, was looking to figure out what it is I wanted to do exactly, and kind of like the same thing that most people do when they join the military. It's either you want to do it, or it's a last resort. It's kind of the same thing with police work, from at least my experience. I'm sure you've seen.
I work with a ton of Marines, right, as law enforcement.
Well, guys who become cops, it's the same scenario. It's like, well, I've always wanted to be a cop, or I don't know what else to do, so I guess I'll be a cop.
Yeah, just in general, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's also a bunch of Marines that are like, what the hell am I supposed to do? I guess I'll be a cop.
Yeah. That part's interesting too, because I think a lot of people who are in that same mindset are like, I just want purpose, and I don't really have a specific reason why.
You miss the order and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's not exactly the same, but I think there are a lot of things that complement each other and things to be said as far as what translates and what doesn't. But in general, I think that's why most people transition from the military into some sort of law enforcement roles. It gives them a guiding purpose, and you get to choose how good or how bad you want to be at it, or if it's for you or not, right?
But like it puts you in a position where you're part of something bigger. You've got guys on your left and your right that you're working with. You're back in kind of a semi-team environment.
Yeah.
I know that's a big draw for me because I've been in law enforcement now less than a year, but that was a big driving part for me. Like you said, you either it was something you wanted to do or you kind of fall into it. For me, it was something I've wanted to do for a very long time, and I knew I couldn't live with myself without at least trying to do it first.
Yeah.
And I know a big part of that for me was wanting to be a part of something bigger than myself, and like trying to do good in the world, and then working with other guys that you rely on. Like they rely on you, you rely on them. There's that teamwork aspect.
Yeah.
So I think there's that huge crossover between the two, and why that's a pipeline.
That's the same thing my dad told me. He said, you're going to have to scratch the itch. You're going to have to do it because I want to do it since I was a boy, right? But then there's guys that are like, I'm not sure. So where do you fall in that?
Yeah. So I don't think I necessarily need to be a cop as far as like that's my calling. I guess some people, choose like, yeah, that's my calling. Like I need to be a cop. It's not my personality, but I'm kind of the mindset that like, if you're going to do something, be really good at it. Like you have an obligation to dedicate yourself to something that is bigger than you and be good at it and be proficient and try to exploit the opportunities the right way and try and, if you're going to climb the ladder, bring somebody up with you and, by the time you get to the top, reach down and help somebody else up type thing. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't really know specifically what else I would rather do. I don't have like any other special skill that's like, yeah, I can go flip this right now and go be some major IT guy because that's what I do on the side and I love it. It's like passion in general for me is just the camaraderie side of things and, kind of like why the two communities are so close knit in some regard. So I think I'm just kind of there right now to take it for what it is, look at the opportunities, get the training, be good at a certain, specialized field. Even within law enforcement, you can continue to specialize, which is nice. And just kind of see where it goes. Because it's a long career, man. I mean, it really is. And I look back at my time in the Marine Corps too, and I know you retired. But being at 9 years, you're like, dang, dude, I was like halfway to like full blown retirement. And then I get out, and now I'm a cop. You know, I've been a cop now for 5 years. It's like our retirement in North Carolina is a 30-year career. And it's like, bro, I started over and some. Like, I got 25 years, dude.
Yeah, you'll have had 39 years in service if you did a total of 9 plus 30, right?
Yeah. Well, you said you can like buy back some of your time. They don't count all of it.
Yeah.
So like my law enforcement time starts from scratch.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's wild to think if you did, 40 years roughly total of actually realize what you bought back. You did 30 years in law enforcement, 9 in the Marine Corps. That's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough. You probably won't live that long.
Yeah, exactly.
From the stress of what you do now.
Yeah. Gotta enjoy life.
Knock on wood, yeah. Well, you're a super happy-go-lucky guy, at least on the surface, right? We don't have to dig super deep into that.
Let's not do that. We don't know.
We don't get into your psyche. Not too much.
Yeah.
But so your experience in law enforcement, like you said, specializing. So you're on SRT now. I know you moved from one department to another, but on the other one you were also on SRT. So
That's right. Yeah.
Within law enforcement, the specialization, what would you consider the transfer? How did the transition go for you? Because that's the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about. How was the transition from the military to law enforcement? What's applicable? What's not? What can you take with you? What do you have to leave behind?
Yeah. So I think in general, anyway, the transition out of the military is being good at like articulating and transferring your skills to like what's important to whatever you're going to. Like, I don't want to say like the civilian world or the real world and the military, because they're not totally different. But like, if that's all you know, then you're not real good yet at understanding how to talk to somebody who doesn't know what you're talking about. Or like, how do you make yourself marketable in the skills that you actually do have and transfer that to something else? So I think I got lucky in that regard. One, because of the amount of time I spent in the Marine Corps. I think had I only done a real short contract and maybe 4 years, I would have had a worse time in my transition because I probably just wasn't at that maturity level yet.
Yeah.
Especially to transfer into law enforcement, I think I would have a really rough time doing that. But I think based on the time I did spend in and the roles I was able to fill, being an instructor for a few different things, being the rank I was, and having the exposure I did to the things I did, and the people I had mentoring me on my way out and my entire career, I think that really set the pace for how my transition went, right? Because I knew, like, make yourself marketable, you have good skills, like, make sure that stuff is translated well, so you can speak highly on your behalf and make yourself wanted by other agencies or other people and stuff. So I think I had a great transition, honestly. I think I was really lucky to have a great transition.
I feel like that's not the most common experience. So if you had to encapsulate, like, what were things that you did to make it so simple, or easy for you? That just because anyone listening is going like, oh, I want to leave military and go to law enforcement, or I want to leave military and do whatever.
Yeah, man, and I wish it would be as easy for everyone to. So I also got lucky because there's, rumor and stuff that like no one really helps you get out of the military. They actually sometimes make it harder because like when you're getting ready to get out, like you have to have dedicated time to go through certain transition courses. You have, VA appointments that you got to make and actually attend. And then of course, within that last year, 6 months or whatever, your unit's still trying to have you go out to the field and do deployments and extend for 6 months so you can go to this operation.
Yeah, the Marine Corps only, even whether you were getting out 4 years, 9 years, or 20 years, the Marine Corps was only required to give you 6 months. So they could, by right, work you to the bone until that 6 months, and then you have to get all that stuff done.
That's wild.
There's actually, there's a lot of tools that I found out that like in the Marine Corps, you go to the transition readiness.
It was like TRS, and then I think they changed it to something else.
There's I always forget the name of it. There's like the guy.
TRS,
There's the guy in the unit, right? That you go to schedule the TRS and all that. Unit transition coordinator, and there's a lot of classes that are available, but they don't tell you about that.
Right, because it would encourage you to leave.
It would encourage you when they would just be set you up for success. And so I went to one of them, and there were two infantrymen. There, and they were both there, and they were begrudgingly there. They're like, my staff sergeant made me be here.
It's like, bro, you're lucky to be here.
Yeah, and it was like, but the one was like, well, I already have a job contracting. It's like,
Which is great.
yeah, it was like, well, do you? Like, well, I put the application in. That's not the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's always there's good stuff for people that want to do trade schools and
Yeah.
do college or whatever. But I think so. I educated myself first. I guess what was the big major piece. Like
Okay.
read through like what my benefits were, like what I actually had earned. Because the whole time you're in, you're not thinking about getting out for 9 years. You know.
Right.
I was thinking about being in and progressing for 9 years, and then
Right.
now all of a sudden you have 6 months to get your life together, and then figure out everything that like you've accumulated, and then find all your SIF gear, which is
Oh, yeah.
a whole other thing. But so I educated myself, made sure I attended the classes, and luckily I had the support of another staff NCO who was like kind of phasing me out and phasing himself in. He was like, dude, go do what you got to do, man. Go to your appointments. Just let me know where you're at. We're cool.
That's
I'll
cool.
take care of it. And so he was very supportive and let me do that. So, did my VA claim, made sure I had all my TRS stuff and my transitional classes together, and then started job hunting. And I think that was the hardest part for me because, like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Right.
So how do you look for a job that you don't know you want? It's
Mhm.
like,
Well
so-
said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you were drawn to law enforcement because the easily transferable skills?
So, man, I didn't even know what that was because I didn't know anything about being a cop. So
Right.
I didn't know what cops did, right? I think I had gotten like 3 tickets in my entire life or something. So like all I knew was
pirates.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly right. So I had like zero insight about law enforcement. Pretty much the same that I had for the military. Like first in my family, nobody that I really knew, didn't have anybody to really talk to about it. So like I didn't have like the law enforcement or military role model.
Right.
That's not a dad joke, by the way.
Yeah. Well, we're not gonna delve into your psyche. We already said that, right?
That's another episode.
I mean, we all know cops get in high-speed chases and
He's,
bust bank robbers and do all kinds of crazy shit every day, right?
Yeah, we shoot people every episode, and then there's no
Any
CSI
more?
for us.
Yeah, a
Right.
little more.
Right.
We never have to go to court on it, and
Don't
then
even
we
go
get the
warm up.
medal and we go home, right? I would love some more. Thank you. Look at this acts of service, right? Public. What a servant, guys.
Oh my
This is
god.
love language.
That
Right.
is my love language.
Right.
There you go. Let me get a little sippy. So I had some other family changes and stuff going on during that time period, so that kind of helped narrow down, like, at least the location.
Right.
Because the place I wound up being my last duty station at the CQB school was nowhere near where I was from originally. So either way, I was going to have to move, relocate, figure out life in a new spot.
Is that Chesapeake?
Where I was, yeah.
Mhm.
In Virginia. And, I was from Florida. So we had some other life stuff going on.
That explains a lot.
What,
That you're from Florida.
Yeah. Is that a crazy man thing? A Florida man thing? Yeah. Okay. I'm not that bad.
Just been handed the Yoda shirts.
Yeah. It's Grogu. First
Yeah,
of all,
y'all can't see him from the waist down, but he's wearing Baby Yoda pants.
which is a treat for everybody here.
It
Because
is-
normally
it
I
is
don't
Grogu.
wear pants.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Can't confirm.
Can't confirm for
Yeah.
sure.
So what ended up driving you there? You said it was some family stuff.
Family
You ended
stuff,
up
yeah.
at that department.
Yep. Yep.
So how was it? Let's just say like your first 6 months, probably culture shock.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that was actually pretty easy because it was academy, right? So it was like
Yep.
very structured, like
So let's compare that to your boot camp experience.
nowhere close. Like,
Not even the same thing, right?
no, because, I'd been in for 9 years and, raised a few squads and then been through a couple things and, helped a bunch of people and,
Did
the
it feel
time
kind
and
of
stuff.
cheapened a little bit? It was like you're like they're trying, but it's kind of lame.
Not really lame. It's more so, not that you're on a different level or anything, but you're thinking about the time frame, right? Like, at this point, 26 years old or whatever I was, spent 9 years on active duty, so I have some life experience. Everyone else who is pretty much in my class that didn't have life experience is 21 years old, just got out of college, or just moved out of mom's house, or still
Yeah.
living with mom and dad, and they decided they want to be the police. So now they're here at this community college, going through this law enforcement training academy, and
Yeah.
it's the first time being yelled at, right? And I'm like, dude, what? Like, you know what I mean? And not
Yeah.
not that your time in the military in general is not boot camp for that long that you're in, right? It's like
Yeah.
boot camp and it's over, and then there's some intermittent things of yelling and discipline and all that, but so these guys are going through their first disciplinary session for 6 months straight, but it's nowhere near like what you would expect or experience from a military academy, So it's very, I don't want to say relaxed, but to me it wasn't stressful, right? Like
Mine was a joke.
well, to me the being studious was stressful for me. Like,
Yeah.
that was where I had my stress. It wasn't the PT, it wasn't the getting yelled at, it wasn't the shooting or the tactical stuff or knowing how to wear a uniform or like looking sharp or command presence. Mine was like, be a damn good student, because this stuff is serious. And, you know, once you leave here and the books come with you, you know, if you pass your test and stuff and like you're on the road, like you better be able to recall information like very quickly. And like we're talking about, you know, constitutional rights and arrest, search, and seizure and stuff, and that's a very serious thing, right?
It's a different level of liability in law enforcement.
It really is, yeah. And not that you're not liable in the military, but like I never once thought about constitutional rights in my time.
It's like not a thing.
right? Like you're on a different set of rules, but there are rules and they're strict, but it's a different thing.
Yeah, you essentially have the same rights as a prisoner of war.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah.
You have the right to mail and food. Treatment. That's pretty much all you get.
Is that just the Marine Corps? Because I feel like the Air Force wouldn't say that. You know what I mean?
Oh, they probably wouldn't say that.
And
But
if they
Yeah.
add it's, you get
So,
extra.
like,
well, they do get paid extra if they
Stay at your base?
Stay at our
Yeah.
bases. They
That
get
makes
paid
sense.
extra.
My dad, when he was in the 80s, had to do stuff with the Army and the Marines, and he got extra pay anytime they did anything with the Marines because it was so shitty that the Air Force was like, "We're sorry. Here's a bonus,"
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's still a thing to this day.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
So to kind of answer your question anyway, so it wasn't stressful for me, but what happened was I turned out to be, you know, more so relied on.
Mhm.
Like, you know, I
That's
became
a
the
lot
class.
of experience, yeah.
Well, yeah. So you become like the class leader, the class sergeant, or whatever, and now you're like doing the same thing you were doing in the Marine Corps, and you're raising a new squad of people, and you're like, dude, I hope y'all pass your test. It's like, you know, how can I help you do this, right? So again, first time people being yelled at, they've never done rigorous PT before, now they're being held to testing standards and stuff for physical
Right.
fitness and academics. And you know, this is the most stressful thing they've ever experienced in their life so far. So it's like now here I am in this class of however many people, you know, trying to mentor them while at the same time I'm doing something brand new to me. Right. Much different when like you're a SME almost and you're a senior person in the field that you're in mentoring people. But like I've never done this before either.
Yeah.
So like I'm teaching myself and trying to teach you guys at the same time. And learning a lot at the same time. So very heavily relied on for like the leadership side and the mentoring side of things, which wasn't bad. Like I didn't feel overwhelmed because of that. I felt like there was kind of like a mutual understanding. Like I didn't get, it wasn't a gentleman's course for me by any means. Like I didn't get like special treatment, but it was like, hey, this is going to be a problem if like you don't hop in and fix it. So like, can you help us help you a little more and, you know, interject yourself and
That makes
you know,
sense.
redirect some people a little bit and give them some more context for why this is
Yeah.
important.
And cadre will identify someone's leadership potential and try to make them do stuff, you know?
Right.
That's a common thing.
Yeah.
Like we had a retired warrant officer in my class, and he kind of got shoved into an informal leadership position,
Right.
Because he's the only one that, I say only one of the only people with any kind of experience with structure and and discipline and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Probably a pretty common,
I think so.
phenomenon. So I'm curious about the use of force stuff. You know, we're both cops, and you're not to
Baby
pick
cop.
on you, but baby cop, yeah, baby cop, dude. So, sorry, I had to. You have small children, you understand. Yeah. Anyway, use of force stuff between doing things in the Marine Corps, being deployed, and all that, compared to being a cop. When you talk about use of force in the military, and whether people like it or not, your objective is typically to kill shit, right? And that's like the whole ethos of the Marine Corps, right? It's just killing stuff. And then you gotta whoop into being a cop, and it's kind of the opposite. We're pretty much always trying to not have to kill anyone. So how did that go?
I don't have any issues with that at all, honestly. Just because, you know, the way it's ingrained anyway, and like the how it's presented, you know, there's severe liability, and it's, you know, your goal is to not show up there and then be like the hammer that always breaks the glass, right? Like your role is very different. And those of you that are in law enforcement that are listening, you're like, yeah, dude, I wear like 87 different hats. And like, I really don't have a choice, or I have no heads up as to like which one I got to put on for this call, whatever it's going to be. So like the use of force specifically, you know, I didn't have any issue with. I mean, it's about being reasonable, right? Like assessing a situation, which you are very heavily and intricately trained on in the military. And I would say that probably the biggest thing is just like the level of violence that's expected, right? And I wouldn't say that it's not allowed in law enforcement, because it is, but you are more under the microscope and more analyzed on what is reasonable based on training and experience, and situational stuff, right?
Right.
Like nobody's gonna, in the Marine Corps, if you know you were involved in a firefight, no one's gonna go up to you and interview you individually as to like, well, why did you shoot but he didn't, and how did these three guys wind up shooting but he didn't? What did you see? Why didn't you see that? And like how many years do you have on? Have you been to this school? Like nobody's gonna do that, right? Like you're an infantry squad, you're a unit, like you go
Right.
and you do stuff.
There's no forensics, you know. In
Right, like
Fallujah.
yeah,
That's
nobody
how it
comes
works.
out after a firefight overseas and like puts up
Right.
crime scene tape. Like that's not a thing. Like nobody comes out and picks up the shell casings other than the people that live there in that country.
Right.
It's not it's kind of a joke, but
Relax, liberals. It's called dark humor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's not atypical of what you would expect for an answer on that. It's like it's different, but it's not different in the sense that use of force is use of force. I think probably the biggest thing that sticks out to me, and not being a veteran, is just there's no real court of public opinion for an individual. Like you said,
Right.
you can get in trouble from your command for doing something wrong in a gunfight, right? That's still a thing
Sure.
for you guys. As
Yeah,
a
war
Marines.
crimes are real.
And not even going that far, but yeah, war crimes are real. Cowardice is real amongst Marines, soldiers, whatever, and cops. You see it anywhere. That's a thing. But what's different is, at least from my outside observation, you don't end up on CNN as an individual getting vilified in the military, typically, unless it's
As
very
easily.
specific. Right, as
Yeah.
easily, yeah. Unless somebody dimes you out, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, or
But-
people record things and then put it on the internet like idiots.
Right,
It's
right.
I mean, there's the whole Gallagher thing. So like,
Yeah.
Yeah, things happen. But I think too, like, if you actually like pay attention, to your training, like you're taught escalation of force
Yeah.
in the military.
Absolutely.
And if you actually like pay attention to it, you're like, oh, like there's varying levels to this, and I shouldn't just go from like this person frightens me, I'm gonna shoot them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's levels to it, and so when you're an intelligent person, you can like easily relate that over, and it makes more sense. You can definitely escalate faster,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's still like it has to be there, and you are still accountable for your actions.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
let's say something we were always taught too is an escalation of force can actually be a de-escalation for the situation.
Correct.
So de-escalating isn't what everybody thinks it is, where it's like verbal judo, you're talking everybody down. Like shooting somebody can be a de-escalation if it prevents further violence. So when people say, "Oh, you should have de-escalated this," it's like, well, he did, just in a violent manner.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the situation and what's appropriate.
Proper application of force based on totality of circumstances.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, sometimes I feel like the military is almost a little bit more strict on the actual steps of de-escalation. Like I think back to, let's say, like vehicle checkpoint training or something like that, right? And they're like, "Oh, you got a vehicle coming. Like, what do we do? And here's your steps." It's like, wave the flag, pop the pen flare, and then maybe shoot a warning round. And then, like, if they're really close, then now you can start shooting at the vehicle to disable it. And there's a less of an understanding of like 0 to 100
Yeah.
in some situations.
Yeah.
But on the other side of the coin, it's like expect the 0 to 100, and I hope that you chose the right 1 through 9.
Right.
During that time, right?
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. As a security forces guy, did you find anything directly applicable back into civilian law enforcement?
I think yeah. I mean, so like we weren't police, right? Like,
Right.
So we didn't do any of that stuff, but we did deal with like a lot of civil unrest stuff. So
Yep.
like riot control. That's obviously a law enforcement function, especially
Big
now.
time.
Site security and just having a hard presence in terms of like security posture. So like command presence. You in your uniform is use of force 1 or de-escalation or whatever it is. You're constantly being sized up, just like we talk about in the military. You're constantly being sized up by the enemy, and don't be a soft target, right? Don't be the dude slumped over in the turret or the dude who's looking at the ground kicking rocks on patrol. Like you're the dude that's going to cost everybody to get ambushed, right? Because it looks like we're an easy target. So same kind of thing translates very, very easily to law
Yeah.
enforcement. What else? I think some site security stuff. Just being mindful of what are weak points. How to reinforce certain things. Crime scene integrity in the sense of just that. Like where do I need to have
Perimeters.
perimeter? Exactly. Inner and outer cordons. And then I think the biggest thing, not just security forces, but just military operations in general to law enforcement operations, is like critical incident command. It's like almost everything we did in the military, I relate to a critical incident, right? Because a simple perimeter patrol is like no easy thing. We just don't like walk out of the fence, like out of the wire, and just like go walk around. Like there's intricate planning and logistics and coordination that goes into going on a foot patrol. Where like you go into law enforcement, you're like, I just go drive around and wait for the phone to ring, and like you tell me to go somewhere. And then like I get surprised when I show up and like I just deal with it. I'm like, yeah, it's like, okay. And then you have things, that are a little bit more higher pace and higher liability, say, you know, chases and vehicle pursuits or foot chases and stuff, larger crime scenes, robberies, things like that. And now you're the one. This is where I think my experience translated the most was you're the one coordinating resources on the fly. It's like you're the on-scene commander who may be the guy with 1 year of experience, but you're the only dude there.
Right.
Yep.
So like it's on you to have
There
the
is
situational
nobody else.
awareness,
Yeah.
to know what resources to ask for, know what's available, know where to put perimeter units, and more importantly, know where you are and like what's important now. So like starting to set conditions, which is something we always talk about in the military, setting conditions for a successful operation. So if you're forced into a reactive mode, which law enforcement is a lot of the time, because again, we talk about it all the time in our classes, you can do everything right and still have to react to something.
Absolutely.
So I think that was a huge translation for me. And I think that's why I did really well in some of those higher stress situations and stuff, because I went right back to like squad leader mode or platoon sergeant mode. I'm like, oh, this is easy. Like I know what to do. Like, decentralize, see where I have resources, see where I have people, and start putting people in place because I know what the end objective is. Right. So you start just moving, playing chess, right? Just being strategic. I think that really helps people. If you can translate that from your military experience to your law enforcement experience, I think that's overall probably one of the biggest gains in general that you can do.
Yeah, it's more of a mindset, right? More of like a more nebulous concept than like, I learned how to use a riot shield, and then I also have that in my patrol car.
Right.
It's more about mindset, mental acuity, ability to make decisions on the fly, understanding stress.
Yeah, it's those intangible
Correct.
skills.
Correct. What about the hard skills? We often hear, cops can't shoot, military guys can't shoot, just as a general thing. And that's usually put out there by folks who shoot for a living. They do that one thing and not the 1,000 other things that we all have to do. So how much would you say that your like martial skill set, your direct use of force stuff, whether that's hand-to-hand, I don't know if you did the McMap stuff.
Which tan belt to use?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I was a martial arts instructor.
Oh my God. Please
So-
tell me
Tan
about
belts?
that. And I want to know what sort of like yells you did from the gut, for that.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff, man.
Yeah.
Key eyes.
So I think hard skill wise, I think most people are right in their assumption, and rightfully so, that most military guys and law enforcement at the basic level just aren't as proficient as some of the dudes that you see at like a gun club on a Saturday doing a competition.
I would agree.
100% true.
I would say probably 80% of cops that I've encountered, I would not trust to shoot past 5 yards, and even then, I've seen them miss that distance.
Right.
Miss the paper.
Right.
On a speed drill. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. So I think I got lucky by having an interest in doing those things on my own. Right. Not very many people feel obligated or understand the concept of like, I have this responsibility to be good at these skill sets, and if I'm not, like, either I'm going to get hurt or someone else is going to get hurt because I didn't know what I was doing. So not just the McMap stuff. Like McMap is a whole different animal, and I think it's rooted in a good creation. But if that's all you do and all you know, like you're going to get some brand new white belt in BJJ who's going to tie you into a pretzel.
May I ask one question about McMap?
Yeah.
Is there a camo belt?
No.
Oh, y'all missed such an opportunity, dude.
You would never see it. You would lose it all the time.
That's fair. That's very fair. Yeah. Is the uniform camo? Do you have like a karate outfit?
No, you wear your normal camouflage uniform.
Again, missed opportunity.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm gonna let the Marine Corps.
I'll let the commandant know when
Yeah,
you're back.
appreciate it.
It says this.
Yeah. Well, I'm as the owner of Orion Training Group. I forget carries a lot of weight.
I forgot you were that.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding us.
Please continue.
Yeah, so the martial arts stuff, took an interest in a little bit of that. And, part of that too is like your units rely on people to have an interest in those things so they can train other people. So like, I was a martial arts instructor, I was a water survival instructor, did foreign weapons instructor, a few other things here and there. And then, went to those other units and became instructor and instructor trainer,
Right.
curriculum developer for a different skill set. But that's neither here nor there. But I took an interest in doing the things that I considered hard skills that, one, are always perishable, but translated to what I was, wanted to do or what I was into or, took an interest in. So, shooting, martial arts, BJJ, stuff like that. So having those skill sets and continuously training, just not dropping it off, like, yeah, you're gonna be ahead of a lot of people.
For sure.
Like, they show up to their first, 6-month police academy and they're learning how to hold a gun for the first time. right? And in the military, we don't use a pistol really ever. In security forces, we always had a pistol as a sidearm as well. So like we were a little bit more proficient than your average everyday infantry guy, but that was something that was like part of us, you know, like that was expected. We had pistols, right? Pistols and M4s and all sorts of other stuff. But
Yeah, I had a lot of classmates in the academy that came from the military that had never shot a pistol.
yeah, that's
'Cause
not
they-
uncommon at all.
They'd only shot a rifle because they were in the military. You do BJJ pretty actively now. I don't know how the belts and stuff work. So I'm just curious, like, how's that going as far as transition not only into law enforcement but civilian life?
Yeah.
How would you relate how that is compared to the whole overall mindset? Because kind of what it sounds like in summary. Not that it's time to summarize, but what you get out of transitioning from the military to law enforcement or even to other parts of civilian life is about who you are as a person. And if you're the kind of person that pushes yourself in all things toward excellence, that will translate.
Yeah.
But if you're a shitbag in the military, it doesn't really matter what you do. You're going to translate into that. I know you said that on episode 1 as well. Being an overall good human being is going to translate better into other things.
It does. It shines through a lot more. Like I wasn't the only one who had military experience in my academy, right?
Sure.
But so to some people, it's not necessarily discredit, but there's this people who weren't in the military don't know. So they're like, oh, if this dude did 4 years in the army, man, he's good to go. It's like, bro, you don't know what he did in the army.
Yeah.
You don't know how he is as a person, which is the most important thing. Like I don't care if you really didn't accomplish anything in the army, but if you're a good dude, you're a good dude. So like you'll be a good person, you'll be a good, strong moral character, and you'll probably make good decisions. I can teach you everything else. It's really hard to change 18 to 25 years of being a bad person in 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. How would you say that translates into the stuff that you do on the side other than law enforcement? Like I know you shoot some.
Yeah.
You do BJJ and stuff like that. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I try to do some fun matches and stuff every now and then just to stay sharp. And then obviously I teach marksmanship. So there again lies an obligation to be one. I need to continue to be a student. So
you teach a performance pistol and rifle class for us.
I do. So. Yeah, and an intermediate thing where it's kind of just mixed weapons. So if you don't know how to hold a gun, that's not the class where I teach you how to hold it.
Right.
That's like show up so we can do some more big brain type
push
skills.
Ourselves a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so I designed those marksmanship classes to just be based off of your own individual performance, right? So analyzing and assessing your needs. So I kind of keep them small, 12 people.
Right.
And we shoot an assessment, and I take notes on you and figure out like, hey, like what do you need to hear me talk about while you're here? Like, what can I see that you need, right? I kind of do that for everybody that I watch individually shoot the assessment. I do it one by one. It takes up time, but like the first hour and a half of class is worth doing that. Because then now I can spend the rest of the day doing stuff you actually need to hear me talk about.
Right.
But like instead of just, I'm going to talk about grip and stance for 2 hours and we're just going to shoot at the 3-yard line. Like some of you may not even need to hear that at all. So I just wasted your time and wasted your ammo because I didn't actually diagnose what it is you needed, right?
It's like how we do the departmental evaluations.
Exactly. Yeah. Like
The one we did
show
in
me
South
where you're
Carolina.
deficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. How's your hostage rescue? How's your this?
Exactly.
How's your that? Is that how programs are run when you do stuff in the military, or is it always ground up?
Yeah, no, not at all. I would assume probably in some of maybe the higher tier stuff that Blake has a little bit more experience in, or a lot more experience in, because you're part of some of the development of curriculum and stuff now.
Yeah, and some of it, like where I was, I had a lot more say because I didn't fall under training and education command, the last billet. So there were certain things like we had our CQB mod qual. And we try to get away from using it as a test instead use it as an assessment. So like day 1, show up, we're starting pistol training, so shoot the pistol mock wall. Just what can you do? And then try to use it as like, okay, well, I have the blocks of training set up, all those blocks of training are going to happen, but if I don't need to use a bunch of ammo because their grip is really good, but maybe their reloads are crap, then I can take some of that ammo that was going to be used on recoil management and put it towards making reloads better.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it depends on the level you're at.
Yeah. Some of the stuff with military curriculum, like your hands are kind of tied. I know you experience that even now as a contractor doing a military school. It's difficult to be able to finesse certain things that are off the books, even if you know it's a better, more viable tactic. Like they're only going to get evaluated on what's on the lesson plan, man.
Right.
So make sure, if nothing else, they know what they're tested on. And then once they show proficiency in the testable objectives, go ahead and give them the extra sprinkle of stuff that, is not necessarily advanced, but off script, so that way it's making them more efficient overall in the end, right?
Kind of like methods-based versus performance-based grading.
Yeah.
And I had not heard of that concept until I talked to, again, it's the guy from your background that helped develop our team. I got really upset one day because I got written up for standing too wide after shooting a perfect score.
It's silly.
And they were like, yeah, we didn't teach you to stand that way. I'm like, well, I've been to other courses and trained with other people, and this fits I'm literally a foot taller than the guy telling me this. And he's like, well, you don't need to mitigate recoil that way. It's just awkward. Don't stand like that. And, this is why we said that. And it's such a strange thing to me. That seems like something that would happen in the military, but here it is in a law enforcement team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me. Have you encountered stuff like that the sort of behavior that you would think is stereotypical from the military, that's sort of like asinine grading on arbitrary stuff in law enforcement, or would you say that those two experiences are pretty different? Even if it's not qualitative stuff, but just leadership and everything.
Yeah, I think some of the leadership stuff a little bit more, I would say. You would think that the military would be like that, but honestly, I didn't have any personal experience where something like that, like your example,
Right.
I don't think I saw something like that in 90. In fact, I think that's pretty ridiculous.
That's pretty
It
wild,
actually gets
right?
me mad for you that happened. But in fact, what I do say to myself is like, wow, that's so law enforcement.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even relate that to,
Like how
to the
lame is
military.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never experienced it like in like a testing aspect, like you lost points or got critiqued. I definitely I got yelled at the first time I was doing mine because like my feet weren't staggered enough and I moved my foot like 2 inches. He's like, yeah, like that. But when I started, once I was testing, right, no one actually critiqued what my stance was, how I shot, as long as I was accurate enough and made the times.
Right. This was odd for sure.
Yeah, and then afterwards, there are people who have their own ideas and critique, but never
an official hey, come to my office.
and counsel you because I don't like the way you stand while you shoot. I actually had as a buy, I had one guy we used to make fun of him because we called him the 80s guitar power stance because he stood so wide. But he shot well, and as soon as it was time to move, he would be this massively wide stance, and he would start moving. I'm like, all right, you look hilarious, but
If
you're
it works.
performing.
So there's a level of acceptable. If it works, don't fix it.
Mhm.
And then there's it's working, but can we make it work better, right? And it's not here's your write up, and I'm not going to fix you anyway. So you if he would have offered you hey man, you shot 100, let's get you to shoot a tighter 100, and I think that this is how I can get you there. Totally cool, but still, I'm not going to write you.
Well,
up,
I was
right?
so upset about it because it wasn't a critique for performance because I
Right.
shot a perfect score. So I called the program developer, not to tattle, but I was just like, hey man, I don't understand. You wrote this qualification. Why would I get critiqued on this if I shot it perfectly? And
Right.
he's like, well, you see this stuff, law enforcement, military, it's because people are looking at the method and not the performance.
Mhm.
They did do the method we taught him, regardless of the result, because that's lower tier of the pyramid in instructing, right? Method-based evaluation.
Actually, I did experience that. Now that you bring that up that way, yeah. So
Please tell us about it.
Well, I mean, it's again super silly. So in our pistol qualification for law enforcement, you got to shoot at the 25 prone, right? But they want you to shoot prone,
That's
laying down
interesting.
like pencil style,
Yeah.
on your stomach, completely prone, punched out, in a line, right? Because you're apparently using a PVC pipe for cover.
Right, of
And
course.
they're like, well, if you got that, you got to use it. And it's like, well, what if it's not there and I could shoot better this way? So for me, my first time dropping down prone, I had experience in advanced marksmanship techniques and stuff like that. So I was not that I thought I was better or cooler, but it's it makes a lot more sense for me to just lay sideways.
Yeah.
and do this and look, everything's in the X. Isn't that crazy how it works? Instead of trying to peek up, and break your neck, trying to shoot prone and hide behind a PVC pipe. It's I can lay down much faster here and deliver rounds quicker, which is going to keep me alive longer. And plus my body armor is nowhere to be found. If they shoot me, they're hitting me in the face. If I lay down this way, at least I have a chance they hit me where my vest is, right?
Right.
I feel like a large part of that too is department liability. They don't want you to do anything outside of what they're telling you to do because they can't say, well, if you do something, they can be like, well, I didn't teach them that. So
Nail on the head, gentlemen.
Yeah, 100%.
I was literally about to say that.
Yeah.
Is it's development of tactics and procedures and things that you're taught is often to assuage department liability. And I'm curious how that applies to the military because now we're getting into the compare and contrast stuff. there's not liability in that sense. You know,
No,
it's not like you're going to get sued. So
it's different because instead of like worrying about the liability of like what you might do to like a citizen that might complain, it's more of like if a Marine goes down for a heat casualty, the commander is going to try and go after all of his leadership.
It's because he laid down the wrong
Yeah,
way.
it's like
bro.
why weren't you with him last night?
His socks are white.
Feeding him water all night long, like it's absolutely your fault. This other grown man
yeah,
didn't drink enough water, and
Yeah.
it's like same but different. You know,
Yeah.
so instead, like you're just like held liable for the decisions of another grown adult.
our waiver even says in one of the check boxes you have to initial, I am a grown adult and I understand that I need to drink water in order to not be dehydrated. And that's Jason thought that was hilarious. Another Marine, right?
Yeah.
But it's so true because someone's gonna be like, "Why didn't you make him drink water?" I'm like, "I don't fucking know. Drink water, dude. Like you're made of water. Drink
Yeah.
it."
Yeah, but then like when you hurt somebody else, it's like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's somebody. It's definitely not exactly the same, but it is similar.
I learned very early on that like, you know, like majority of the people that you consider that you can say, hey man, it's big boy rules, I do what you gotta do. That group of people is so small. And you can't expect other people to know what that means or to take ownership of that.
Maybe 10%.
Oh man. And then when you find out who they are, you're like, wait a second, hang on. You didn't drink water and like you want to blame someone else? Like what? Like we're in the same how are we in the same
fact,
circle?
let's all pull our dicks out and pee so I can check to make sure you drink
Dude,
water.
it's crazy. And then there's things on that same thing where it's like, okay, in order to prevent the liability, we're going to develop this rule that becomes curriculum because it solves a safety issue and it's
Mhm.
not a tactical principle that makes us a better warfighter or better
Like-
at the skill.
Low port.
Yeah. Well,
That's a perfect example, right?
You know,
We can't point guns at the catwalk, so we have to point them at the ground.
Right.
So now operationally, we still can't point guns up.
right.
Right.
This is something too that like me and the other Mitch were talking about. He's an instructor at the schoolhouse that I
Yep.
left,
Yep.
and you know he's bouncing ideas off of us a lot. And you know I know what he's talking about because I helped write some of the curriculum. And there's stuff that just wasn't able to get changed because people who ultimately sign up just don't understand, and they're more concerned with the liability of changing something that they don't understand and trusting the people that they say are subject matter experts.
Right.
They'd rather just leave whatever's in fine print the way it is.
Yeah.
So
You have a skill set here, but the guy signing the papers is here.
right. And,
Right.
and again, it's not that you're better than anybody or not. It's
No.
just that you
They have to
designated me
trust you.
as a SME, right?
Yeah.
So like a subject matter expert, I have to be able to do those things. So like there's something in the curriculum where it says only this person in the room is able to move on this wall. It's okay. Well, that locks in like regardless of the configuration, regardless of the stimulus in the room, like if you weren't this numbered person coming into the room on entry, you're not allowed to go beyond this point on a long wall at all. It's like, well, dude, that doesn't fit every situation.
Yeah.
So like now we just
Too
wrote
rigid.
something in curriculum that people are going to attend this class, leave this class, and teach that to other people, right? And go try and do this operationally and learn that it doesn't work, and then it builds distrust in the curriculum.
Correct.
You're like, well, dude, what are you guys teaching us? And like, why? It's like, oh, dude, like I can't think of a single good reason why this is on paper except for a range safety rule, which doesn't
Yeah.
apply
Or
in the real
shoot
world.
house tactics.
Right,
Right.
right.
Like I'm
There's-
gonna build this tactic because this is the shoot house I do stuff in.
Exactly.
And it works
Yep.
here.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's exactly what it is.
And we see that as well. The shoot house that I kind of grew up in only got changed once. The layout only got changed once in 6 years because it takes about 8 hours to change it. It's like 80-pound metal and wood walls. So it wasn't that it couldn't be changed. It was that it was kind of a pain in the ass.
Stand by for a solution.
Yeah. So we'll see if the Hiram project takes off.
Yeah, if it ever gets going.
But the point being is like, because it was so much of a pain in the ass, we actually built a whole other one, but that one was completely static. So we had two shoot houses that within a month of using the other one, we knew the complete floor plan. So then we talked about it today in class. Actually, you get into like an open floor plan house. How many open floor plan shoot houses have you ever been in?
Yeah.
There aren't any. It's always closed cell because that's where we can demonstrate like foreman, hit your corner. You know what happens when it's a giant open room that only has 2 or 3 doors in the whole house.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why that whole principle-based stuff works. So I know we kind of got off a tangent there, but it is interesting to see that both in the military and in law enforcement. It's kind of an institutional, like we're talking about method-based. Well, it works here,
Yeah.
so put it on paper.
I see that too a lot, and even doing normal patrol tasks in law enforcement, and then on the SWAT, the SRT side of stuff too. trying to bring more principle-based training and, tactics and stuff like that to the team who is very specialized in doing this exact, niche of skills.
Right.
But even then it's kind of broad, you do an array of entries, you do different type of open air takedowns, vehicle assaults, all sorts of stuff. So, but in order to make all that stuff mesh well, it has to be based off of, sound principles, that are grounded in pressure tested and evaluated tactics. And it may not fit for everything, but that's why principle-based training is so important, because you could always default back to, if I'm able to accomplish this, and this, I can apply that to a variety of situations, right?
Yep.
I found that we've had probably the most success doing stuff like that. But again, it takes time to get people to see different advantages of things and let go of what they've been holding on to for so long.
Oh yeah.
It's not even so much that like it has to change, but it's like, again, the performance stuff. If I can make you this much better just by thinking a slightly different way, like why would you not do that?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and typically it's either lack of understanding or hubris, and I can speak to that from personal experience. As a cop, we were going to change our system of tactics, and it was going to cause us to get less operations. And that's part of why I asked you in episode 1, like, were you disappointed after a while, depending on how things turned out, because you want to be able to prove that what you learned is going to work, right? So we were talking about going from a more dynamic movement to a lot more slow, like almost like a surrounded call out tactic. And this was years back. And that meant we were going to get used less by teams that wanted us to be more dynamic for the surprise factor. Dope rescues and all that kind of stuff, if we want to just use the terminology.
Rescue a kilo.
Yeah, I was so mad. Like, I was fighting mad about it. I crawled halfway to a bottle and called one of my mentors and was like, I can't believe that. He's like, dude, you need to grow the fuck up.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to, whatever your team's doing, you're going to get good at it and you're going to keep going. But if you're so concerned with, like, this is the one way that I like to do it, your focus is completely wrong. And I was very guilty of that. And now we're trying to fight it as a culture. And it's really easy to understand. Like, I'm good at this. I don't want to change. But that doesn't mean that there's not a better way out there. And I don't think that's unique to the military or law enforcement. It's just human nature.
Yeah.
So on that, do you think the military and the law enforcement are more similar or more different? Like, what's
As like
just in
like
your,
operational
your,
organizations?
your experience in the military or in law enforcement, what is it, more similar or more different?
More different, I think, than anything.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that just based on all the transferable stuff. So what makes it so different?
So I think the majority of the people that say that they're similar haven't done both.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I hear from people all the time, they're like, no, but it's just like or the opposite of that is when it is something that is relatable, they're like, this isn't the military. It's
Right.
like, wait, what? Before you were saying that, like, they were so similar. Now you're like, no, this isn't the military. We don't do
Right.
things like that are structured.
Right.
What? So, what was your question though?
What makes them so different?
I just, just the variety of mission sets and stuff that, and I'm thinking of only from the infantry aspect, right?
Sure.
Like, the only experience I have in the military is infantry and security forces.
Mhm.
And, the leadership, academic side of it, of being a staff NCO and having that. And so it's kind of, a three-headed dragon in that regard, or if that makes sense.
That was a really cool metaphor. Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate that. Hydra, or whatever it is. So some of it, they cross paths a little bit, because I can take all my leadership experience and do that. And there is a rank structure of some sort. There is a hierarchy of, you start here, you can work your way up. I'm a patrol supervisor now, so supervising people, regardless of how good I am at police work or how good I was at being an infantry guy, like, my leadership skills are transferable, right? Luckily,
Right.
I'm not a piece of crap, and I'm good at the skills I'm supposed to be good at.
Yeah.
Because if I'm gonna, mentor people, like, I have to actually be able to set an example that is appropriate to follow.
Right.
So that goes back with the proficiency stuff. But I think, in general, they're not the same structurally,
Mhm.
anyways.
Your
Like,
responsibilities are different.
yeah.
Yeah, like as an infantryman, you're not going to respond to a domestic and do marriage counseling,
Right.
right? And that's something I never expected to have to do. Like, I'd got to a call as a 23-year-old, and I'm counseling a 50-year-old couple
Right.
that's arguing at 2 a.m. about toilet paper.
Right.
Like, they didn't
Hey,
have
maybe-
enough toilet paper, and they were pissed at each other, and they called me. I'm
Yep.
like, I'm less than half your age. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff
Stuff
where I
like
think
that,
about that.
right?
I'm like, why'd you call the police about this? Like,
Right.
This is not anywhere near my job.
And that could be a whole
description.
separate podcast. I'm like, we're not even doing what we're supposed to be doing, but people just call us for shit that
Sure.
doesn't matter.
Well, that's why it's a call for service. They're asking for
Right.
service, and then
And,
we
and
get
that's
to
part of why it's so different is you kind of have to go a lot of the time.
one weird thing. Not weird, but one thing most people wouldn't expect that does, like they are very similar, is community engagement. And bear with me here, because I'm not a community police guy, but like I get out and talk to people, and in some regard, people will tell me things, or that they won't just, hey, F12, and like shun me out of the neighborhood. Like
Right.
I'm good at talking to people, right? Like
Yeah, community policing is being a good dude.
Right,
That's it.
exactly. Yeah, it's not about doing dances and whatever else and
The
handing out turkeys.
The
like,
glizzy squad,
Right.
handing out hot dogs in the park
yeah,
is bullshit.
hey, someone's got to do it. Joe's not the guy you want doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like you.
I would say no one has to do that.
Right.
Please
Well,
continue.
whatever. Hey, either way.
I hate it. Go
I
ahead.
do too. But I think back to certain aspects of the military, and it's like key leader engagements, right? And you were probably thinking that from the beginning anyway.
What is that?
So I mean, you have a lot more experience with that overseas. But anytime you go to another country and you're establishing yourself there for a period of time, and you're doing patrols in the area, like you're passing through villages, which are cities, neighborhoods, and again, you're a foreign entity, either the police, you're not in the inner circle of the community, or you're the military, and you're definitely not in the inner circle of the community. And so at some point you have to start to gain trust of local leadership.
Yeah.
This is like sit down with the tribal leader. And the
Exactly.
translator.
Yeah. Eat a goat with me, drink my tea, go to the barbecue, do the salsa at this party, eat some tacos, play basketball with the kids instead of
Right.
writing them a ticket for playing in the street.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there's the community relations, or we call it ComRail.
What?
Right. Yeah, so like that's we got to shorten everything. Into
Okay,
an
it's
acronym
gotta
for
be
the
an
military.
acronym.
Really, it has to be.
ComRail, and I was confused too. I'm like, that's not how you spell relations, but whatever. But yeah, so
Relations.
community relations. So like the big one that everybody knows is Fleet Week
Yeah.
in New York City.
Yeah.
But what most people do is like we actually do Fleet Weeks in a lot of different places. Like I did one in Seattle, I did one in Phoenix, and it's like, hey, like we're here, we're the Marine Corps, like we're your Marine Corps, United States is like this is what we can do for you, and we put on the little dog and pony shows, and like, yeah, it's like a little irritating. I mean, it was like super cool for me because I get to like rappel into a
Yeah.
football stadium and deliver the game ball. Like I get to do the really fun stuff on that. But
You got to do that?
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
He threw the winning touchdown pass at one of the Super Bowls.
The win surprised me.
Yeah.
All American over here.
Go Sports.
But like that stuff is done, to like, hey, like we are out here and like this is what we can do, and you kind of like remind the public that like you are there. Because I actually had a kid walk up to me when I was like a brand new little boot in Oceanside, California, and I had, of course, a USMC T-shirt. This is Oceanside, California, right outside the Marine Corps base, and I had like a 15-year-old come and be like, "What does USMC mean?" And that like blew my mind because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
He
everywhere.
didn't get the recruiting video of the guy fighting the dragon with the ceremonial sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually how you get out of boot camp. You gotta fight that dragon.
That's epic, bro.
Yeah, but
A lot of people
like
don't make it.
he didn't know, and that's it's like you go out, you do those community relations. So there is like weird things that just kind of like tie in like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I also think it's lame. I don't really think that's like we need to do that, but it's like one of those things that you can do, and it is relatable.
Yeah.
But yeah, the key leader engagement is better because now you're actually developing actual rapport
Yeah.
with the people you need.
And it's operation. It's directly,
Yeah.
tied to operational success. Like,
Right.
If I don't earn the respect and the trust of this community leader, they're not going to tell me anything about the crimes that are happening in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I can't develop suspects. I can't figure out who's building bombs over here.
We call that snitching.
Yeah,
so-
I mean,
Well,
having not,
like give them enough hot dogs, they'll tell you the truth.
No.
yeah, I mean,
That's how it works.
having not done the job, but I
I'm
think
so
like
cynical.
counterinsurgency
Exactly. Yeah.
is like very similar to that, and it's like sometimes you have to pick like the lesser evils. Like, all right, these are all tribes, and all these tribes have their little militias or gangs. Like, who is like most aligned with what I want ultimately, which is I just want like peace.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and who's like the lesser of all the evils, and who's willing to snitch or inform on others.
And they're looking at it like, what can I leverage to work with this foreign entity? We
Yeah.
want to label the police like that in order to get what I need. And that's a really strange but very truthful way of looking at modern law enforcement. We're trying almost to function in an occupied territory, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You kind of have to assume most people are hostile. And then that rubs the people that aren't hostile the wrong way. right? Like I'm sure happened overseas. You have people that were probably friendly towards you, and they got treated a little rough, because you have to expect that they're not going to treat you well. There's the media sentiment, and there's also stuff. So that's an interesting thing that people listening to this who have never been a cop and never been in the military may find a little shocking, but um, especially after I'm approaching 9 years as a cop, and then in Baton Rouge we had a ton of ambushes, lost a teammate, not to an ambush, but lost a teammate, lost coworkers. In the time I was there, 12 cops were killed by gunfire between the city and the parish. Um, it's you kind of feel like people are out to get you, and you end up in this like us versus them sort of mentality, which is really dangerous to be in as a cop. So I'm curious, in your experience so far, have you felt it that bad, or is it more of a moderated feeling? Because a lot of guys will express that sentiment, and that's to me indicative of a problem.
Yeah. I've never really found myself in a state of like hypervigilance, right? And I think that's kind of what that translates to.
Oh, that's what I'm describing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I'm not going to tell war stories, but you experience a lot of critical incidents.
Sure.
And sometimes it could be in your first year, it could be on your first day, or you maybe won't until years later. It just depends on what you insert yourself into, how you handle certain situations. I think the reason that I handle those things well is, again, training, experience, messing stuff up, and really diving into like how I got lucky. Like certain things are skill related, certain things are luck, and you want to fill the bar with as much skill as possible and as little luck as possible. And those little slivers of luck, you're like, oh damn, like that could have been that could have been really really bad, right?
Yep.
So I think self-diagnosing like those events and stuff really help you stay sharp, because the hypervigilance I think is what gets most people.
Absolutely.
And then that's what develops the us versus them, and then that's how you get people that are snappy and don't respond well to high stress situations anymore because they assume that everyone is out to get you. And not to be lame and talk about the OODA loop and stuff, but or not the Cooper's color codes and all that, like different levels of awareness on and fixation on threat and stuff like that, and just your overall awareness. Most people find themselves very often all the time in red, and then that turns into the only way to go from there is black.
Yep.
Right. So if you're in that red hypervigilance all the time and you're always focused on everything being a threat, when something does happen, even if it's not necessary to go that far or to react a certain way, you go straight to condition black, and you probably react in a way that you shouldn't.
What does the military do? Because I'm fully aware of what law enforcement does for those people, and I'll just say it's most likely dog shit in most places. What does the military do for somebody who's suffering from that? Because I do think it's a very common thing in the military, and I'm curious how it gets diagnosed is the wrong word, but dealt with if it's not medically, at least at the like leadership level.
I mean, from experience, you have to learn to work with the different types, and not to steal the show, but we did a raid and training raid, and the team leader was put down as a casualty, and he put our point man in charge, and he was overwhelmed. He was in the black, and I was hollering from like me to Mitch because we needed to do something, and he was just standing there. So I kept yelling louder so that he would do something. He just kept standing with this blank stare in his face. So I finally just started doing stuff, and afterwards he's like, look, everyone's so different. He's like, I can yell at you and you will perform it. With him, like, you actually have to go up and like touch him, and that gets his attention, and then you just deliver a command just loud enough that he can hear it, and then he'll do it. So you have to like learn how to work with different people, which not every leader can do, and you get really bad leaders that only have one way of dealing with people, and it generally doesn't work at all. But if you learn how to deal with all the different people and lead them all in their individual fashion while not giving anybody special treatment,
it's a hard balance.
It is. You can develop those people further. But yeah, there is no like real specific program or anything to
There's no critical incident debrief, no characterization of like, hey, look, you've been through a lot on the last deployment. Why don't you take some time and go to this, this, and this?
Not at the conventional level.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know that the Navy does some of that for NSW guys. They're a little bit more holistic in some of their approaches.
A lot of their
within
approaches.
within soft, there are a lot more programs because they've identified these
Yeah.
issues and they
Well, they
realize
put $1.5 million in each. Dude,
yeah, there's a huge
so
investment
they care
in
more.
every single guy. So yeah, they're way more invested. Whereas they look at the conventional side, kind of like the humorous thing I heard, one father say when he looked at his son, he's like, "I can make another of you." Right? It's
True.
like we can make it like there's a fresh boot camp graduation, every few months. There are more infantrymen being created every few months. There's more truck drivers and this and that. So
That is different for
there's
sure.
not
Yeah, which
always
is the opposite of
the same approach.
Yeah. So in law enforcement, right? And feel free to speak on this, but there's lots of programs about like, hey, are you good? Right? Whether we believe those work or not. And I think partially it's because the value of each individual is very high because there's not that many cops and there's not that many people who want to be cops.
I was thinking recruitment's super low right now.
It's down 66% since 2015. There are 66% less applications per year. So that's wild, right? So in your experience so far, what's it been like on the like, hey, you're having a problem with hypervigilance? Like, is there, not saying you have, but
Yeah.
what has it been like compared to the military? Because on the conventional side, it sounds like there's nothing.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more open and expected in the career field, and it really just depends on, part of why I wanted to be a supervisor was because I wanted to be able to recognize those signs and
Be there for
offer
somebody.
and be there for somebody, right? Like, I may not have the solution, but I know that there's a way to get to the solution. So instead of just letting you burn out and then now we're down another person, like, you actually do matter and like you do need to be taken care of. So like if you are experiencing that, like, I got a way to help remedy that. If that doesn't work, we'll go to the next thing until you're satisfied that you're
Yeah.
back at a manageable level where
Yeah.
you feel normal again, right? Or at least somewhat normal. And it really just depends on who you work for and where you're located. Because, there's like unions in some states and there's certain structure of different law enforcement agencies and stuff. So as far as I know, there's no like national standard for
Zero.
Yeah, zero for aftercare, so to speak, of
Almost
critical
anything in
incidents.
law enforcement, there's no national standard other than
No.
case law.
Well, that just like the general investigation type stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like you're involved in a critical incident, expect to have to sit down, get read a few different types of rights, and tell your side of the story,
Mm-hmm.
and then get debriefed maybe, and go on admin leave or not. And
I've done that and I've been on admin leave for almost 2 weeks, and it was like the clearest cut thing ever. And then we've had stuff that there was a lot of investigation, and it was like 2 days.
Yeah.
So it's just really weird variation of experiences.
Yeah. There are some good things that I've seen, like early intervention on stuff where like, we're not gonna tell war stories, but you obviously see bad stuff, right? Like you see things involving other people at their worst times, and you see you're exposed to a lot of life and death situations, not necessarily yourself in life or death, which you do.
You see dead people.
But you see dead people all the time,
kids
right?
and all
Yeah,
that.
kids and bad car crashes and things that the everyday person doesn't ever think about. But like,
They say it's a 20 times the average person's traumatic experiences in a year.
Yeah.
One person's whole lifetime of bad stuff, you see 20 times that in 1 year of service as a cop, statistics wise.
Yep. And so I compartmentalize things very well,
I do a
and that's
pretty
probably a
decent job.
bad thing,
It is.
right?
It is. I'll tell you from experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I not to overshare or tell war stories, but agreed. Went through a ton at my first agency.
Yeah.
And we were working like 90-hour weeks, and you're not getting paid overtime. Doing 120, 140 operations a year,
Yeah, it's insane.
40 to 60 training days on top of being a patrol supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
And you got all these ambushes happening and manhunts in the woods and stuff. And I mean, I was not in the best place, and everybody knew it. And there's nothing being done about it, right? Because they can't afford to lose you. And if they put you on admin leave so you can go get what you need done, you're out of work, right? At a substation, or for anyone listening, that's basically like a section where you patrol. You're supposed to have 10 people and you have 4 because we're down 60%.
Yeah.
So they let you go. Now there's 3. Those guys are just going to get overworked by 25%. So the burnout management thing is really difficult, and there's not a new boot camp graduating every fucking 3 weeks.
Yeah.
No one's coming.
So that is, that's a very different part of law enforcement. And I wasn't sure as we do this conversationally, I wasn't sure how it's going to go, but that does seem to be one of the biggest differences is like the people management and the irreplaceability of an officer compared to conventional forces, at least.
Yeah. My wife was told at one point, she was also a Marine, and her sergeant major was like, he didn't mean it in a negative way, but he's like, you are replaceable. And in that sense, he was telling her, he's like, she was going really hard, working really, really, really hard to get her job done and do it really, really, really well and help everybody. And he's like, you're going to burn out and no one's really going to care because we can make another career plan. We can get another career planner if something happens to you. Like, yeah, they may not be as good and they're not you, but it's
But they check
what
the
do we
box.
need? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the check.
it's
We
a
need,
job.
we need that job filled. Like, we can fill it if you leave. Like, when you leave, it'll be filled by somebody else. If something happens to you, we can fill it with somebody else. And then, I mean, I don't know about the law enforcement, but sometimes, like, you just put somebody there that may not have to be qualified
Warm
necessarily to
bodies.
be there. Yeah, but just put a warm body in that position to say, like, hey, this position is filled.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that in the military. And, yeah, there's resources, but they're not effective. And there's no programs.
Yeah. Everything I had to go to help myself was outside law enforcement.
Yeah.
Usually the programs in it are kind of half baked.
I think
Not always.
in the last couple of years, I think I've seen at least I've been more observant to the pushing of like, hey, by the way, there's this thing that you can go to if you need to talk to somebody. Or like,
Certainly.
hey, we're not going to force you to go, but you were a part of this incident in this, secure anonymous email. Like, reply if you're interested in attending this debrief and
Yep.
doing whatever. And it's for you. It's not meant to be like a sit up there and share your feelings thing, but it's like if you want to, we're here. You just want to debrief, and if you need a few days off, we'll see what we can do to help you out and do that. But sometimes you just can't help the staffing issue anyway. But I've had good experiences with that.
That's
Aside
good.
from like the investigation part of it, which you're made to feel like a criminal, whether you did nothing or not, or if you were just there,
Nature
whatever
of
it
the
is.
beast, yeah.
It is, yeah. It's because it's a whole other conversation, but the aftermath of it, there's an understanding that everyone's going to see some bad stuff, and you're going to need to talk about it, or you're going to need to at least vent to somebody who has the same level of relevance that you do, so they understand. It's different trying to vent to somebody who doesn't have the experience. Like a
Certainly.
therapist is a therapist, great, but they still, unless they did the job, they still don't have the exact level
Yep.
of relevance, right?
Yep.
And it's just easier sometimes. I think that's why we tend to fall in on the same close knit inner circle of people.
Yep.
And you wind up just venting to each other and get over it essentially.
And I will say that probably one of the best possible things for my mental health was starting OTG.
Yeah.
Because I got a crew of dudes that understand what I'm talking about, and we have a common mission set.
He's the owner.
Yeah, I own it, by the way. I told
We're
you.
like, I was gonna say we're like all the little autistic puzzle pieces.
I want to be the green one. It's my favorite color. I was telling him when he was talking about wanting to be the police, I was like, first of all, you're an idiot. No one does this job that's bright. But you're going to have to scratch the itch because it's what you want to do. And I'm sure you remember me telling you
Oh
that
yeah,
you
absolutely.
should talk
we
to
had a very,
somebody.
we had a very long conversation.
A
about all
long, frank
that.
conversation. Because the lesson learned for me was like, if you think you're Billy Badass and you don't talk about it to anybody, it will come back to bite you.
Oh, yeah.
And again, the contrast, point of the podcast being contrast between military and law enforcement is that there's almost nothing in the military, which is why it can be such a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that's better in law enforcement. I honestly wasn't expecting that answer either. So this has been enlightening for me.
Yeah. I think a lot of it too, it depends on like who you have in your circle. Like I've shared stuff with you about things I've experienced at work because I know that you have the relevant understanding
Yep.
of what that is. So like I don't just go share that with all the cops.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like not every cop is ready to hear what you have to say because they also don't have the experience, right?
Certainly.
So
And
I think the
is it-
same with military debriefing and stuff too. Like it'd
Yeah.
be really hard for Blake to tell me about all his troubles because like I didn't experience half the shit that Blake did.
You have that you have the guys that didn't deploy and the guys that did deploy. And in law
Yeah.
enforcement, it's the guy who's been in a shooting, the guy who hasn't.
Or even the difference between like the guys that have seen a lot of combat and deployed and then didn't see a lot of combat or no combat.
Yeah. There's this weird measuring contest of
I don't think it's that bad anymore though.
Yeah.
Like I think at one time there was like when the fizzle started happening and like combat deployments were like real low or few and far
Yeah.
between. There was a huge grudge of people that were coming back from like 2010 through 13, the last bit of Afghan deployments, and then the new guys coming in who just knew it's like, dude, there ain't no way I'm seeing a combat deployment. And then there was like, yeah, I'm the big D on on base
Now it
because
happens on social media.
oh,
Now it happens on social media, guys.
I don't do
post,
fuck that.
yeah, post stuff, and then you get all these guys like, "Well, it's not a real deployment." And it's like, yeah, it is. Like one of the favorites. Everyone's like, "Oh, Okinawa is not a real deployment." If you go there, it's like, It is. That's a real deployment. Like that's really work. That's being super. Is it as difficult and austere as things can be? No, but like that's
Sounds
still.
like a blast.
I mean, it can be. Don't get me wrong. It absolutely can be.
But you can also die swimming out to Recon Island with the waterproofing bag full of beer.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, let's start to wrap it up because it's getting late for one.
Something you don't do in Okinawa.
Yeah.
Of course not.
Or
the banana.
well
show.
said. Well said. There's also a reason Marines aren't like loud off base after 8 p.m. and it comes down to that comment right there.
Mostly because they're in jail.
Yeah. Yeah. It's why Japanese women are afraid of the round eye to this day.
No, that is true.
Okay.
We bomb the manhood out of that country.
Yeah, we're going to take that out of the podcast.
What happens whenever you nuke a country and kill all the fighting age males? They end up with like hentai and robot women.
They just took it there.
Yeah. Leave that in.
Yeah,
That's an order.
That was
The
not.
others.
I didn't come up with that quote. That was actually came from a Japanese woman.
Yeah.
It's the wife of one of them. Was like, why why all these young guys walk around looking like anime characters? Like, you bombed the manhood out of our country. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Have you ever seen the that meme of the dominoes, and the guy's poking the little one, and there's like the 8-foot tall one. It's the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, by Franz Ferdinand or whatever, and then it's got the giant one is hentai.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he hadn't started World War One, we wouldn't have had World War Two. We wouldn't have nuked Japan. We wouldn't end up with fucking
Tentacle porn.
yeah, tentacle porn. So on that note, repent, turn to Christ, don't watch tentacle porn, even though it's because of Oppenheimer, which is a cultural thing right now. It's a lot of connections, right? Imagine if he knew, he's like, oh no, the Jap Vaporizer 5000 was dropped in Japan. I thought it was a joke, right? And then it happened, and then imagine if he also knew that the consequences was an entire generation of young men would beat off in cartoons.
I thought we were wrapping up. Are we wrapping up?
Sorry, you got me.
We don't actually wrap up. Yeah, so
Like
based
You
off
got me
episode
going,
one,
man.
Just like we don't actually ever start the podcast.
Yeah, we don't actually wrap up.
I need
We
a
just
Tootsie
talk
Roll.
about wrapping up, and then like 30 minutes later, we actually just cut it.
So, in summary,
Yeah, in summation.
yeah, we talked about all kinds of ways that it's contrasted between military and law enforcement. Your experience transitioning, also moving between the military to the law enforcement.
Yeah.
Any summary thoughts for people that are listening to this or watching it?
No, I mean, I'm just kind of one of those people that had a good experience, right? I still had a lot of stuff that I failed at and, was able to recuperate from and then go and try new things. So I don't know everything about all the stuff that I'm involved in, but I try to be as studious as I can in all the different skill sets and continue to develop and do stuff. So if there's anybody that's listening that has a similar journey or that thinks they're going to be on the same path, I'm more than happy to answer questions. If you guys hit me up and whatever platform you can find me on, or
Tell us about that as well.
What's that?
Where can you be found other than the comments of this YouTube video?
Yeah, right. So you could always just tag me. Well, you gotta know where I'm at, right, before you tag me.
Yeah. That's why I was like, where can they find you?
Yeah, no, for sure.
You
My
can tag
address
me.
is no, you can find me on Instagram. Is really the only social media platform that I have in relation to this stuff. So it's just Joe_Orion Training Group.
So he does own it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Joe at, and the at stands for owns.
It's Joe TG.
Yeah, Joe,
Joe
TG.
TG.
Joe
Right.
owns TG.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there you
You're
go.
really developing now.
Yeah. So you can find me on there. Find me on the website. Do whatever. Send Jared an email.
Don't do that. Hey, I wanted to ask Joe.
Joe a question.
Yeah, I'll go
Yeah.
back on all the therapy I've been to, and
Yeah.
I'll just finally do it.
Yeah. Well, point is, I'm probably tagged on
Relax,
something on one
guys.
of Jared's posts anyway. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, more than happy to answer questions about that stuff, man. Leadership stuff, transition
Yep.
from law enforcement, military, or just law enforcement or military questions.
Yep.
Anything that I have any sort of insight or experience in, I'm more than happy to answer questions about. Offer resources if I know of them. But like I said, I only know what I've experienced, and I'm not like this endless knowledge of all sorts of different things. So,
right.
I can Google just as easily as you can Google.
That's right. GTS is powerful.
Yeah, it's insane.
But we're super lucky to have you. You have a great background, and like the theme of your answers, most of the podcast has been being a good dude and not quitting. Often leads to the success that people wonder what's the secret sauce, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you successfully transition from the military to law enforcement? How do you do anything? Well, you have a positive attitude. You keep pushing. You seek help. You don't try to do it alone. You talk about it. All those things. So
Yeah.
that's what I would sum this up as: is regardless of what the situation is. You leave the military, you don't know what you're supposed to do with your life or whatever else. Seek out resources. We talked about it a little bit on episode 1. Helping people and being a good dude is so much more important than almost anything else, and will lead to all the other things.
Yeah. It's like, what's that Simon guy who does all the leadership talks?
Simon Sinek.
Yeah, he does that, that comparison chart of performance and trust.
Yep.
Right? And,
Yep.
most higher tier or whatever organization you're part of would much rather prefer a dude who is of medium performance and high trust than all performance and little to no trust. Right?
Agreed.
Again, so
100%.
in summation, be a good dude. Don't be a POS, right?
Yeah.
Help other people do what's in your power to be a part of those
Right.
good changes and stuff.
Get a lot of hydration. Eat red meat.
Yeah.
Sun your balls. Don't watch
I'm
porn.
actually currently cramping so bad.
Did not drink nearly enough water or training
Did
today.
not, man. No, I don't.
Anything for him, Mitch?
Small box
I
one.
think we got it all covered.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being
Tight.
back on. Your first time, your second time.
Yeah.
And
It's been so long.
yeah, I'm so glad we were able to come all the way back out here with the exact same clothes.
Weird.
Yeah, but we'll have you back on to talk more about other things. And for you guys that are in the comments, if you have anything you want him to talk about again, based on his background experience, just whatever. He's also very handsome, so we'll just have him back on for that reason. But what he teaches for us, a lot of CQB stuff, a lot of shooting stuff. He also does private lessons like Blake does, North Carolina.
Yep.
You're probably most likely to be using what location for that kind of stuff?
Still in Lewisburg,
Lewisburg?
so just north of Raleigh, if you're in
Yep.
that area.
Yeah. So you can contact him directly if you want to just book him because he'll know his schedule faster than I will.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for classes that he teaches, it's just search Lewisburg or search NC or search North Carolina
Or Joe.
or search Joe because he'll be listed as a primary instructor. But anyway, all that stuff is out there. And then also he does help us a lot with our law enforcement contracts. So we'll do a workup. He'll do curriculum development. He can help you write policy. So if you're a cop or an instructor or anything like that watching this, that's something else he's got a good background in. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you tell your friends about it and drop a comment. Help the algorithm out. Thanks. This is the part you're supposed to say bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Awesome.
Everyone gets a unique sign off.
He just said that
I
last
just
time.
did it last time.
Just panicked. You guys want to try again tomorrow, or
We're just in the episode right now.
and it's Orion talking group. Ba-dum-dum.
You got his hands this time.
Part of it.
You got your hands this time.
Yeah.
Miss my own hands. I'm very coordinated. Very athletic, I promise.
Spoon is oddly shaped.
This man is drinking coffee like it's soup.
Isn't coffee just bean soup? Think about it. Let that marinate. If you don't like that, I'm right.
Worse.
You guys want to do a podcast or something?
Mr. Business.
I mean, we're rolling, so.
Am I good here?
What do you think? I think it looks good.
It's just because Blake's fucking huge that he looks like.
So, the entire frame. Both episodes are Blake's episodes.
It'd be funny if Blake literally never said anything. It's just like he's like mouth breathing the whole time in the corner, just looking like a fucking beefcake because you were out angling the fuck out of Joe. Hang on, don't move anything. Hang on. Literally, like he looks like your fucking kid because the angle of it is just perfection. I love it.
I feel like I need to face that way.
Oh, you're
No.
alright. Because you'll be primarily looking at Jared, so.
No, you're gonna be looking almost at the camera, but not quite, and he can clip in.
Look deep into his disappointed eyes, okay?
Used to that.
Did you see the disappointment that come over my face? And also, it washed across it.
I wanted to be covered in
Come on
mine.
your face.
Is it recording? Fuck! fuck?
And this one's live too.
Yeah, it's on right now. YouTube Shorts.
YouTube doesn't do live, right?
Yeah, you can do live.
Can you really? You can do lives.
Like
Hang
one other thing, and we can run multiple cameras.
Mitch's was better.
That's BDSM right there. Or ASMR.
Let's go back a second.
Yeah, when we started making shibari jokes on our class, and the guy was like, "Yeah, I've been trying. The knots are really
You've
slow."
been making shibari jokes.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you
He
did.
said, "This is BDSM." I said, "No, technically it's shibari. It's an art form." And he was like, "Wait, you know about that?" And I was like,
don't make it dirty.
"Yeah." I was like, "Of course I know about it." Then he started saying like he was using the wrong stuff, and the knots were hard, and it just takes practice.
Yeah.
And then I realized everyone was not talking except us. It's like,
Everyone was listening very intently to your conversation.
yeah, it's okay.
It was
It's
weird.
not. It's not wrong. It's not
It's not
illegal.
wrong.
I feel okay about it. You're trying to make me feel guilty.
No.
This motherfucker.
No.
It's still recording, isn't it?
Yeah, why would it have stopped?
Are you ready?
It's probably the best intro we've had so
I
far.
was gonna say, bleep out everything. Yeah.
It's just a series of just beep.
Yeah, so then we beep at class, and then I beeped his beep. And then everyone watched you guys beep intently.
The only not centered word is shibari.
Oh, is that door closed?
Closed and blanketed.
Okay, perfect.
Try to keep the nonsense out.
Perfect. Well, I guess we'll get started then.